Today I'm going to demo making a slab built mug. And you can see that I've rolled a slab here. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick. It's fresh off the slab roller. And I'm going to use my blue rib to get rid of any canvas texture that's left behind from the slab roller. It's one of the first things that I notice about a piece when a student makes it is whether or not they have taken the time to get rid of that texture. So do take the few minutes of just zen smoothing. You'll also notice sometimes that you'll find a little air bubble, and this will just pop it. Flip it over. Don't forget to do the back side or the other side. When you roll your slab, you want to make sure that you roll plenty of clay, because you're going to be, when you make the mug, you've got to make the sides as well as the base. So rather than going back and rolling another slab, if you roll a big enough one in the first place, you'll have plenty of clay to work with. You'll notice that there's kind of two tones in my clay here. Different batches of clay sometimes have different colors. This really isn't anything to be concerned about. I'm going to work from a template. This is just a piece of paper that's been cut out. It's 11 inches by 4 inches. It's a rectangle. I'm going to fit it towards the bottom. And I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to cut straight up and down around my template. Now, your template can be any size you want it to be. I've found that 10 by 5, 11 by 4, these are nice size mugs. They hold a good amount of whatever it is that you want. I'm going to take away these extra pieces of clay that I don't need and remove my template. I'm going to keep this piece of clay because I need to still make the base of my mug. So with this piece of clay right here, it's just a flat rectangle, right? What I need to do is when I stand this up, these two sides need to join together. And one of the ways that I can make them join together neatly and not have any lumps or bumps left behind is by cutting at a beveled edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly grab a ruler, which I do not have. So I'll just grab a straight edge. Any straight edge will do. And I'm going to back it up by about 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm going to tilt my needle tool at a 45-degree angle. So up until now we've been cutting at a 90-degree angle. Now I'm going to tilt it at a 45-degree angle and I'm going to draw it along that edge, cutting away a triangle wedge of clay from my edge. Now what I'm going to do, this is the tricky part, I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to flip it over long ways. Flip it over long ways. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. Back it up by about 1/4 of an inch and take my needle tool at a 45-degree angle and draw it along there, cutting off a triangle-shaped wedge of clay. Now, if you can think spatially, you'll realize that the next time I stand this piece of clay up, those two ends are going to fit together like a little puzzle, right? Those two ends are going to fit together like a little puzzle. So let's join them together permanently. I'm going to take a scoring tool, sometimes called a whisker tool, and I'm going to score up one side of the slab and then the other. And then I'm going to take my finger and add a little bit of slip to one side only. I don't need to add it to both. Now I'm gently going to coax these two sides together and compress them. So that forms a nice seam. So as you look at the rim, of course it's not the right shape yet, but as you look at the rim, there's no lumps or bumps there. I'm going to take my wooden smoothing tool and I'm going to support it on the inside as I zip the clay across. I'm going from high to low. And smoothing out any marks that I've made. So what does that look like? Looks kind of like that right now. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing from this end. And I'm going to go on the inside as well. Again, moving from high to low and blending all that clay in. The clay that I used today was recycled clay. I did not use fresh clay. If I'd used fresh clay, it would be really hard. It would be really soft, and it would be very hard for me to get this cylinder to stand up the way I've gotten it to stand up right now. I'd be messing around with really soft clay. So the fact that this clay was recycled and is lacking a little bit in the plasticity department is a good thing. But it's not lacking so much that it is cracking as I form it into a circle. Okay, now I need to create a base for my mug. So this is where this piece of clay comes in handy. I'm gonna place my circle down. I'm gonna get it as round as I can. Sometimes the little white bowls are useful for this because they are angled. You can kind of set them in and just get that edge nice and round. See, I'm just going around it. All right, I want this to be the bottom because it's kind of the uglier side, so we're gonna do that. Set it down. Now I'm gonna take my needle tool, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace around the outside, and I'm kind of sketching, right? I'm just drawing my needle tool lightly around it. I am not pressing down hard, but I am kind of dragging it along the outside of the cylinder so that I leave behind the marks that I'm going to cut. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back over these lines and cut out this base based on the lines that I sketched on the clay. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. I can still do some trimming. Now the rest of this clay, I can recycle this, or I can hang on to some of it for maybe the handle. I'm just gonna put it to the side. I'm not gonna get rid of it yet. And you can see, maybe you can see on here, kind of a shadow where the cylinder sits on this base. So I'm just gonna score that area. Nice and deep. Always make sure that your score marks are nice and deep. And I'm gonna score the base of this future mug. Nice and deep. I'm gonna get my slip back here. Slip is just water mixed with clay. If your slip is getting too thick, you can add a little bit of water, and if you're running out of clay, you can just add some little bits of clay to it. Now I'm gonna take my cylinder, the scored side, and I'm gonna compress it down. I'm gonna line it up. And once I'm satisfied with where it is, I'm just gonna give it a little bit of pressure. One of the things that I probably should have done is put a little piece of paper towel under it before I got everything wet, because it doesn't want to come off very easily. So we're just gonna slide it off the table. That's so annoying because it was looking so pretty before. Oh my God, what a mess I'm making. All right, but you know what? I'm the boss of the clay. So it goes back down. Now I have put it back on its base, and what I'm doing now is getting it kind of looking good again, because I screwed that up as I slid it off the table. So don't be like me. Make sure you put a piece of paper towel down. And now what I'm doing is I am joining the base to the sides, and I'm actually going to flip it over, and I'm going to use my blue rib to just paddle the bottom And I'm kind of curving the edges a little bit so that they kind of fold over. Any extra clay is just going to fold over onto the side. That's just going to make sure that we've got a really good joint where the sides are joining to the base. Next, I'm going to take my wooden smoothing tool and I'm going to blend that clay in. Going from high to low. So if you've got a higher area in one direction, you want to pull that into a lower area. So the direction of your pulls may change depending on what kind of clay you've got. Well, that's looking really good. Now I'm going to go back to just a little tapping. Little smoothing on that joint. Okay. Despite my having it stuck to the table, it's still in good shape. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small piece of clay and I'm going to turn it into a coil. So I'm going to crush the clay down, making sure not to get any air bubbles in there. And then I'm just going to roll a super thin coil. This is going to be the thinnest coil you've ever rolled in my class, because I usually say no coil's thinner than your pinky. But in this case, this is going to be a supporting coil. And as a supporting coil, we just need the clay. We don't need it to be super thick. What this coil is going to do is it's going to go down the inside at the bottom, and it's going to help join the sides to the base without leaving any room for a crack. Now, if your hand is too big and you can't fit your hand down there, you can use the wooden smoothing tool. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I am just going to compress this thin coil. I'm supporting it also on the outside as I press down. I'm not just pressing and changing the shape of my mug. I want to maintain the nice shape of my mug. But this is coming around, compressing it in. You'll also notice that I didn't score and slip. I'm using really fresh clay here, so I'm going to press that in, and hopefully stretch it so those two sides can meet. There we go. So that is a supporting coil in there, and I'm eventually going to help make that like disappear. So by smudging it and smoothing it and supporting it on the outside, that coil disappears. And it just means that I won't have any leaking, which is, there's nothing more depressing than making a mug and then having it leak. And I won't have any places for bacteria to get caught. Okay. And I can take a paintbrush and just use a little bit of water or slip to smooth that area inside. The goal is for this this coil to just disappear in there. You shouldn't be able to see it anymore. It should just be gone. Okay, so what does it look like now? Now it's starting to look more like a tumbler, and it is not going to leak. I'm fairly confident about that. I still have some areas that need some smoothing and a little bit of care given to it. But basically, I've got my cylinder almost ready to go. And as always, I'm working much faster on this video than I expect you to in person. And I also would, like, if I wasn't being filmed, I would take my time. I would be doing a lot more refining at this point. Okay, so now what we have is we've got our cylinder. We got a pretty thick lip on here though. So it wouldn't be very comfortable to drink out of a mug that's this thick. So there's a couple of ways that we can go about dealing with such a thick rim. One of them is trimming it down. And the way that I would recommend trimming it down is the same way that we refined the pinch pot, which is to take the metal rib and just pull away a little bit of clay, supporting it on the outside. I'm just pulling away a little bit of clay, throwing it into my slip bucket since that's right there, and paying attention to the rim the whole time, right? Wanting that rim to look really good. So once I've done the inside, I can also do the outside, just pulling away a little bit of clay. A more comfortable rim to drink from is one that's a bit rounded rather than squared off. So you can look at this as rounding off your rim. Once you've taken a little bit of the clay away, you can wet your fingers. I just dip them in water. And now I'm sliding my fingers along the rim and kind of melting the clay a little bit and rounding that rim so that it'll feel nice. And you can work on this as long as you want. You can go a lot thinner than this if you want to. You can go about half as thick as your walls are. But you want your rim to look really nice. The rim is one of the first things that we see when we look at a bowl or a mug, consciously or unconsciously. So if there's something wrong with your rim, it's one of the first things you notice. All right, so once that's looking pretty good, I would spend a little more time making sure that these joints are good, that I have smoothed my clay, that there's no cracking going on. I'd just spend time on that. But I'm gonna move on real quick and I'm gonna talk to you guys about handles. So with my leftover clay, I can kind of use anything that I find, anything that I have on hand, and cut out a strip of clay that will serve as a handle. So I'm just tracing around my wooden smoothing tool. I have one of the larger ones. And if I smooth these edges a little bit, I could curl this into a handle, an interesting handle. That's one option. I'm gonna let that one firm up a little bit. I might end up using that one. Another idea would be to take, again, a coil of clay. And I've found with handles that if they're a little bit flat, they work better. So the perfectly round handles tend to rotate in your hand a little bit. So I would at least flatten them slightly. And there's another example. So you can do really thin coils, and you can braid them, you can twist them, you can make a C shape, you can make an ear shape. You can really do anything that you want that kind of looks good with the mug. So it's often good to try it out and see which one appeals to you, see if it needs to be trimmed. Normally the handle doesn't extend above the rim, so you would want it to start a little bit lower. You'd want it to come out a little bit lower. The other point of a handle is it's to keep your fingers from touching the mug, right? So if you fill the mug with hot liquid, you do not want to burn your hands. So the point is to have it pulled away a little bit from the mug. So that's what that's all about. You're going to score and slip your handle into place wherever you want your handle to be. And you can also add reinforcing coils like you did here on the upper and lower portion of that handle. And I'll make a separate video about that. But basically that's how you get your cylinder going. And that's it. Thank you.